Now, this past year, I've had the privilege to review a lot of cars, and a lot of them were Mazdas, and I have loved every single Mazda that I've reviewed so far. And the reason being, I just think they give the customer so much value compared to the competition in the same price range. And now that is definitely paying off for Mazda because they're on track for record US sales for 2024. And we're going to go into the numbers here, and then I'm going to let you know exactly why I think Mazda is selling extremely well right now. In addition, to all the features that you get with pretty much every single new Mazda that you're getting today. So before we jump into Photoshop here, and I'm going to show you what I think. It has to do with the design, with the exterior and the interior design. Why I think people are choosing Mazdas over other brands. So before we jump in and have a look at that in Photoshop, let's check out this article from CarScoops and see what this is all about for Mazda. It's exciting news. So Mazda is on track for record US sales as it confirms new ICE, hybrid, and EV tech. So best ever November results hit a record 410 to 420 units in 2024. That's what's expected. The CEO highlighted the ongoing development of ICE, hybrid, and EV powertrains, on track to smash its all-time sales record with expectations to hit over 400,000 cars or vehicles sold. The Japanese automaker is sticking to its guns, pursuing a multi-pronged approach to powertrain development that spans combustion, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, range extender, and also electric models. So far, Mazda has moved 384,181 vehicles year to date, marking an 18.6% uptick compared to 2023. Not bad at all, despite being a relative old-timer. This is a hint of what I'm going to talk about in Photoshop in a minute. The CX-5, which I actually thought they discontinued for the CX-50, but I guess it's still in production. So the CX-5 remains the best-selling Mazda with 8,733 units in November and 122,954 units year to date. Other key models like the CX-30, which is also a great car, 87,500 units, and then we have the CX-50. I just had that a couple of weeks ago for a week to review. What a great car that is. I remember driving it almost over a year ago when we had this press drive here in Colorado, and I just fell in love with it in that short drive. So I was excited to have it for a week, and I just fell even more in love with it when I had it right here for the week. You can go and check out the review and what I have to say about that, and also the CX-90 and the CX-70 and the Miata and the CX-30. All of those, my reviews of those are on the Sketch Monkey channel, so go and check those out. Then you have the CX-90, 48,000 and a half units sold. So those are the top sellers. You have the CX-30, CX-50, CX-90, and the CX-5. And then you have the Mazda 3, which was such a great little hatchback. I had the turbo version. Unfortunately, you can't get the turbo with a manual, and that is so annoying because the manual transmission in the Mazda 3 is great. I just want to be able to have it with the turbo and the all-wheel drive. So the Mazda 3 hatchback and sedan have sold a cumulative 34,830 units so far in 2024. Not bad at all. Then you have the MX-5, best November since 2006 with the 798 units sold in November. It sounds really cool. The boss of Mazda remains clear-eyed about the brand's powertrain direction. His expectation by 2030, hybrids and internal combustion engines vehicle will still make up about 2/3 of Mazda's US sales, which is great to hear. Hybrids is the way to go, I think, specifically for a brand like Mazda, like an everyday brand with great features for what you're paying. And just hybrid technology is going to improve the range as well and the fuel economy. It's just a great formula for Mazda moving forward. So pushing back the EV rollout gives them a little bit more time for technology development. So that is the reason why Mazda hasn't gone, full EV just yet. They want to refine the technology and probably the charging capabilities and so on And when they're ready, they're gonna launch a lot more EVs. So by 2027, Mazda will have completed the in-house development of its first EV dedicated platform and its own hybrid powertrain as well. Mazda is also building a very advanced research base for solid-state battery technology. And Mazda is developing a twin-rotor rotary engine for the US market, likely to serve as a range extender in a hybrid setup. So Mazda is going nuts here with innovation. I love to see it. They're also deep into development. They're not done yet. So they're also deep into developing its Skyactiv Z powertrain, described as the ultimate combustion engine with unprecedented efficiency. This is set to arrive by 2027. The Skyactiv Z promises to push Mazda's internal combustion effort beyond 2030, likely extending the lifespan of its gasoline engine in a world that's increasingly electrifying. So, great news. Very cool to see what Mazda is up, doing in-house, what they're fiddling around with the research and all the engineers of Mazda. So let's jump into Photoshop here. Let me show you why I think Mazda is sort of pretty much outselling all of the competition. I mean, they have some great sales number for 2024. And the reason being here, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think a lot of it has to do with, first of all, the features of Mazda. Great features all across the board. The exterior design looks fantastic. Kodo design language, that like we have here. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. But then we also have the interiors. And the interiors of Mazdas these days, they feel, maybe some would call them outdated, because a lot of them still have analog clusters in the gauge cluster, and most of them do not have a touchscreen unless you're in Apple CarPlay. You need to use this rotary dial. And I think that is actually a great selling point for Mazda, because I think a lot of, at least me personally, if I were to have like an economy dream garage, it would be a Mazda, either a CX-50 or a CX-70, both absolutely fantastic cars to drive. The looks, the interior, the fuel economy. The only thing that I would like to change in all Mazdas essentially is the fuel tank and the range. It's a little bit too low for me. And then I would either have a Mazda MX-5 Miata, the RF with a hardtop, or a Mazda 3 Turbo. Probably the Miata, because I can get that in a manual. So looking at the lineup here, these are the best sellers of Mazda right now. We don't have the CX-30 here because I prefer the CX-50. But looking at this design here, CX-90, look at how beautiful this is. Kodo design language, like we talked about. And what does that mean exactly? What is Mazda talking about when they say Kodo design language? The philosophy is that we have a lot of empty surfaces here, or calm surfaces with a lot of fluid motion in it. And you can clearly see that in the reflections here. For example, we have a lot of bulging reflections going all across this surface, and it looks beautiful when you have the sun at the right spot. You can see all the design details that goes on inside of this empty surfaces. So it's playing around with empty surfaces with a couple of sharp key lines in the graphics, and that is what Mazda is all about right now. And this looks like it's moving forward. The CX-90 and the CX-70, they look like they're moving forward even when it's standing still, because we have a lot of volume in this area, being the heavy part over the rear axle. And then it sort of becomes lighter as we go to the front end. And very confident front end as well. Upright position with the nose. Everything is vertical in the front, looking very stately. And you have a couple, as I said, key sharp lines. For example, this line here at the bottom, looking absolutely stunning. With some chrome for the CX-90. And this is one of the reasons why I personally would go for the CX-70. Because the 70 has a different front end. It has less chrome, it feels a little bit more sporty, and you also don't get the 3 rows like you do get in the CX-90. And personally, I don't need the 3 rows, but I just want to throw in the CX-90 here. And looking at the interior, what a stunning interior this is. This one, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think the gauge cluster is completely digital here, but it's totally fine, because look at how beautiful enclosed this is with this cap up here. Then we have this brand new infotainment screen, widescreen infotainment sitting in this bay in the interior on the upper side of the dash, and you have this brown interior. You can get it with the black interior or the brown. I kind of like the brown one. I think it looks very classy. And look at this. Even the brand new CX-90 and the CX-70 still comes with physical knobs and buttons for the climate control settings. Very easy to figure out how to use this. As you can see, it's completely separated from the infotainment screen up here. So old school, some might say, but to me, I just think this is good design. It's just functional design like I want to see in cars today, not just screens everywhere. And even the vents on the side here look beautifully integrated in this interior with the very nice looking steering wheel, two-tone steering wheel, and the features that you get. For example, the CX-50 I had came with heated and cooled seats for the front, heated seats for the passengers, and that was about, I think, I might be wrong here, but that was just over $40,000. You can either get the CX-50 or the RAV4. I would 100% go with the CX-50, and the styling is fantastic as well, looking very almost industrial here. We still have the Kodo design language. You can see we have a couple of sharp lines and these beautiful fenders over the front and the rear axle. We have this piece, black cladding, of course, this being a sort of an off-roader, so you don't mess up your paint when you take this off-road. These are the more basic wheels. You can get it with, I do believe, 20s, which look great on the CX-50. And you can see the comparison here, for example, compared to the CX-30, is that this front end has the same CX-90 style, meaning that we do have a very vertical front end here, looking super confident in the front. And of course, a greenhouse that slopes backward beautifully. Now, looking at the interior of the CX-50, one of the best interiors in this business, a lot better in my opinion. Much higher quality feel than the RAV4. I remember this piece right here, this leather piece is extremely soft, and you have this contrast stitching in it as well, in addition to this non-touchscreen up top. You just control it with this rotary dial down here, which is totally fine because this infotainment screen is one of the most simple infotainment screens you can get. You have everything you need in a very nice layout. It's super easy to figure this out. And look at this. We have a analog tachometer. This is digital, the speedometer, and then analog fuel gauge and temp gauge here as well, in addition to the separated pieces, knobs, and dials for the climate control settings. And I do think these interiors are a big reason why people are choosing Mazda, in addition to everything else we talked about, the features, the Kodo design language for the exterior. But I do think the interior also has a huge role in why these cars are selling so well. And then we have the beautiful Mazda 3. This is one of the best looking, if not the best looking hatchback on the market today. I do like the Volkswagen Golf as well, but I think this just has a specific, a very unique styling to it. And here you can clearly see this Kodo design language. We have this line here at the bottom wrapping all around the car into the rear end, coming around here and wrapping around the diffuser, going into the front end here. And look at the reflections here. This is what Kodo design language is all about, having these type of reflections going in the body all over. You can see just how thick the C-pillar is. This is not a very functional design. The passenger seat here is going to be very cramped, but I don't care because it looks so good, so it doesn't matter to me. Wheels look great as well. The only thing here, I would like a bigger fuel tank, a little bit more range, and I would also love to have the manual with the turbo. If Mazda dropped the manual with the turbo, I would probably buy that car because that is such a good car. Same goes here for the interior, like we talked about the rest of the lineup here. Analog cluster looking beautiful. We have the housing for it, the non-touchscreen infotainment screen that doesn't stick up too far and feels pretty well integrated in this case. Also separated buttons and dials for the climate control settings, and a lot of cool features here that just brings up the value, making it feel like a much more expensive car than what it actually is. And I do think the exterior styling helps with that as well. Now, last but not least, the MX-5. So I drove the brand new 2025 Mazda MX-5, and I'm gonna link that video down in the description. That was probably the most fun I've had reviewing a car. I've reviewed the McLaren, what's it called, the GT. I've reviewed the Lamborghini Huracan, the Aston Martin DBX, but none of them come close to how much fun you can have in a small little roadster like this, with, I do believe, 181 horsepower or something like that. It's not even that powerful, but it doesn't matter because when you're driving a car like this, like the Miata, you have all the power. You can use all the power all the time. For example, if I was to floor a Lamborghini, I would be breaking the speed limit within 2 seconds. Here, I can just press the gas, go through the gears up to maybe fourth gear before I might look at what type of speed I'm doing. You can have so much more fun in cars like this compared to 600 horsepower Lamborghinis. And the interior looks great as well. I always love this piece right here because if you look at how this one is stylized with the vent here, and then you have this section going on. So you have a round vent and then you have a square vent, and this is almost the exact same style like you have for the taillight. So the taillight comes back in. The styling for the taillights comes back into the interior, creating this piece of design, which is absolutely beautiful. And of course, the manual transmission. One of the probably the best sports car ever made is the Mazda Miata. It's such a great car, and I hope they don't ruin it with the next generation. I still want it to be not too powerful, very light, super small. Don't make it any bigger than this. Even though I'm 6'1", 6'2", I still fit perfectly fine in the RF Miata. I had a great time with this. The most fun I've had reviewing a car this year. This is the club, as you can see, with the wheels, the Brembo brakes, and you have some black sort of carbon fiber pieces down here and also in the rear end and in the front. And we already quickly talked about this interior, which is very simplistic, very cozy, and you feel like everything is just hugging you when you're sitting. You feel like you're wearing a Miata. You feel like you're wearing the car because it's such a small car. So I'm really excited to see what Mazda is doing, and I do think their plan of just taking it easy for a while with EVs until they've figured everything out that needs to be figured out before going all in, or maybe not all in, but going more in on EVs. Before they do that, they want to have things figured out, and I do think that is a good idea. It also, of course, shows in the sales numbers for 2024.